Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and I am the host of this podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I am also a newly minted USA Today bestselling author of the novel Blank. I've created a whole community of book lovers around this podcast, a publishing company, reading retreats, a bookstore, and more. Learn more at zibbymedia.com or follow me on social at Zibby Owens or join the community at Zibby Readers. Kim and Penn Holderness are co-authors of ADHD is Awesome, a guide to mostly thriving with ADHD. We did this conversation in person in my apartment, and you can watch the whole thing on YouTube as well, on the @Zibbyverse YouTube channel. Penn and Kim Holderness have been married for 18 years, and for the past decade, they have been online content creators. Known for their award-winning videos of sketch comedy and music, they have garnered over 2 billion views and over 8 million followers across their social media platforms. Penn and Kim are best-selling authors, award-winning podcast hosts, and were winners of season 33 of The Amazing Race, which we didn't talk about, but we probably should have. Before making their own content in the digital space, they honed their storytelling skills with 25 combined years in the TV news business. When they aren't making their audience laugh, they help international companies make videos of their own along with their team at Holderness Family Productions. Penn and Kim live in Raleigh, North Carolina with their children, Lola and Penn Charles, and their dog, Sunny. And by the way, we have a very special co-host along with me for this episode, which is my husband, Kyle. So I hope you enjoy. Holderness family in the house. Welcome so much. I'm so excited you're here. Penn and Kim Holderness, ADHD is Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books.
We are so excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
No, this is great. I know. So I have a special guest. Kyle is here.
Special guest today.
Today because he just has to be here.
A husband and wife come in.
Yeah.
We get to do a little husband and wife thing. It's great.
I love it. He was in the house, so
Yeah, and I'm constantly recommending books that I've never read before. So
It's tracks.
That's true. He's good at that.
if you're listening in DC, you didn't hear that.
That's right.
Even on your social, the one video you did where you're making fun of how surprised she gets when she hears, and she's like, and you're like, because I always do
had
that.
to stop reacting to it after a while. After about a year of living with Zibby and thinking just the world
was
is
ending.
just
Yeah, I'm like,
ending.
Right.
I'm like, my heart starts pounding. Oh my God, what is it? And then, it's just a nothing.
I think we all do that. I'm also guilty of doing that. We just get so fixated on our phones that like we assume that there's nobody else here. And so the reaction is always way more than it should be, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
And then he just
there's a sale at Penny's or like whatever, you know.
Pennies. His Pennies
Sorry.
closing?
You know what? No, that actually was a quote from Airplane.
Okay.
so,
Okay.
yeah,
right.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Pennies.
Yeah.
why
For our older listeners.
is ADHD awesome?
First of all, the definition of the word awesome is twofold. It is, awe-inspiring, which is in the word. It is wonderful. It is worthy of admiration. And it's also scary, terrifying. When people describe things as awesome in the days of yore, they were talking about volcanoes and comets and things coming hurtling toward the earth. So I believe that ADHD is both. I think it is terrifying when you leave the stove on and you leave the house, or you leave your keys in the car and someone can break in and your family could be in trouble, or you lose train of thought and you don't know where you just drove and you look around and wonder why you came into a room. But it's also a brain that is wildly creative, innovative, outside the box thinking, and capable of things that people with neurotypical brains can't do. So it's both.
It's amazing.
Would you say it's a superpower almost?
For me, it has been. For me,
You don't get to ask the question. Just hang out.
Kyle's doing great.
You're doing
Yeah.
great. That's a great
I was
question.
like, you know what? I'm looking for an opportunity
30
to jump
minutes.
in here. I'm going to jump in.
Yeah. So for me, my job depends on innovation, creativity, and being receptive to inspiration. And the ADHD brain is set up pretty nicely for that. You have to get the systems in place on the other end so that you can get to that point. But for me, I believe that I am a songwriter and a skit writer and a comic and a book writer and all of these things because of my ADHD, not in spite of it.
I love that.
That's beautiful.
And for listeners, you have ADHD. Kim, you do not have ADHD. You've lived to tell.
I've lived to tell the tale. I mean, my brain is wired in a funky way too. I mean, I've been very open about this, anxiety and some fun OCD occasionally. So, I mean, it's not like neither one of us has a neurotypical brain, I guess you could say. But no, I do not have ADHD.
So for the people living with spouses who have ADHD, and I know you write about this in the book, what should they know? How do you enjoy the quirks?
Enjoy it all.
How do you enjoy it all?
Survive it all.
I would
enjoy it
say
all, embrace it.
Well, here's the first thing. For a long time, I did not enjoy it all. I will say when we first started dating, I think all of the things that he mentioned, I mean, the spontaneity and the comedy and all, that is why I fell in love with him. So all his ADHD brain is what I was attracted to. It's once we got married, and I think, if I can be honest, once we had kids and all the plates start spinning and then falling, and then that is when I think his ADHD really, I don't want to put it on you that it became an issue. It just became.
No, I'll say it. It was an issue. I was letting people down. Like, things were falling through the cracks.
Yeah.
So let's talk like Penn's not here.
Let's talk okay. Let's
lay it all out.
People would say, "Oh, it's like you have 3 kids," and that is not. I never laughed when people said that. I did not think that was funny, and I will give all the credit in the world to my husband that when we went to marriage counseling, and when he saw that there was ways that things could improve, he 5 years ago really did a deep dive in trying to understand his brain and why it works. And in turn, I mean, that started the research for this book. And then in turn, I learned so much about the ADHD brain. And so now I know, for example, when he is getting, backpacks ready, putting snacks in the bag, water bottle, making eggs in the morning, doing all this stuff, him turning on the stove doesn't even enter his working memory. So leaving it on, it didn't even enter his working memory that he turned it on. So it wouldn't even occur to him to turn it off. Whereas my brain, I can do all the things. So now I know when you ask what's it like, and I know he's not doing it on purpose. Mm-hmm. And so that changes the tone of our marriage. That I know he is showing up, he's doing the best he can. He's also feeling great shame if he screws up. So if I know he's not doing it on purpose, it can bring the boil to a simmer. It can just the temperature. It's just there's much less tension in our house.
This is good marriage advice. For anything.
Yeah. Just understanding why his brain.
I think it was recognizing how you were reacting as well. Right?
Yeah. And how
are you going to choose to react to this?
Me nagging and me constantly reminding, me being the person that reminded and nagging, made him feel shame.
And neither of us knew, I think the biggest issue was neither of us knew what was going on in my brain, right? Once she learns, through this research of this book, once she learns things about working memory and the emotional flooding and all the other things that come with ADHD, it makes it easier for you to forgive that person, give them grace. Mm-hmm. For me, once I know what's going on in my brain, a weird phenomenon, and I've heard about this with other people with ADHD, once you learn more about it, it makes you more likely to want to get to work on the things that you can improve because there's less shame in it.
Right. So you have the song where you have to remember your keys and all that. Can you just sing that?
Sure.
You want to spontaneously sing?
It's glasses, wallet, keys and phone, glasses, wallet, keys and phone. Make sure to take them all before you go. Glasses, wallet, keys and phone. It's head, shoulders. Thank you. It's head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Yeah, but that's an example of one of the many systems that you've put into place so that you protect against the shameful things that happen as a result of just the way you think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's quite a few of those, and there was a barrier to starting with those when I didn't really know how my brain worked. It was like, man, I'm being treated like a 10-year-old.
And your mom did not know. You did not know early on. Just your mom would stand over you and help you through and give you all the things. So when did you realize this was what it was and how?
Yeah, so shout out to my mom because ADHD, I'm 49, and so ADHD wasn't a thing when I was growing up. Children were not being diagnosed with it, at least not that I know of, because doctors weren't aware of what it was. And so shout out to her. She kind of inherently, innately figured all of these things out because she loved me. And she wanted to positively reinforce me for the most part. So like she put lists all over the house, which is one great tool that you get as an ADHD adult or a child. She found creative ways to teach me, musical ways to teach me. She taught me music visually instead of through sheet music, and she knew that I had an ear for it. So all this crazy stuff that decades of research is now realizing it works for this brain, that was her. That got me through high school. Then I went to college, and I didn't have my ADHD whisperer with me, and the classrooms got a lot bigger. So there were lecture halls instead of, and I went to a state college, so lecture halls were there instead of small groups of students. And my grades dipped big time. I also gave in very much to distractions that I wasn't really privy to. Sure, yeah. Beer, all the other stuff.
You had a great time in college.
I had an awesome time in college. I'm not complaining, but
that's the next book. College is awesome.
Right.
College is awesome.
College is awesome. That's all it's going to be called. There was one specific moment where I was a senior in college and my grandmother died. We were at her funeral and we were talking about, there was this like beach trip that she always organized for all the cousins. And we were having this tough conversation, like, what are we going to do about this now? And I started like thinking about all these great times we had and how they might go away. And meanwhile, they're having this very important like fiscal conversation. And my Aunt Zell she said, I'm sorry, Penn, I cannot focus on this conversation because you have a fly swatter in your mouth. I had taken a used fly swatter. This is Eastern Carolina, so I'm sure it caught a lot of flies, and I was chewing on it. No knowledge of how it got in my mouth.
Wow.
No knowledge of why it was there in the first place, and that felt weird and wrong. And that was sort of the tipping point, like, what is going on? And so I went to a doctor. At that point in the 90s, it was a medical model of diagnosis, right? Where they look at a symptom, they look at a problem, and they try to treat it. And that was about as far as it went. Gave me medicine, took the medicine, got better grades, graduated from college. That was the solution. And then I took myself off of the medication because I didn't recognize the person that I was. I wasn't a bad person. I think maybe people around me might have liked me more. I don't know. But I just didn't. For me, medicine made me feel like a different person. Medicine is great for most people. So I took myself off it and learned how to try to cope with it without really understanding all of the things that I understood in this book. I found Band-Aids, I think, for a long time. Like a job that had deadlines and was super stimulus heavy. Like I was a local news reporter and sportscaster. Married a girl who somehow thought some of this was charming. And then, like she said, I'm answering your question by giving you the entire story of my life. I'm sorry.
I love it. You're making my job easier.
And then realized, to her point, once kids came into play and once starting a business came into play, that my executive functioning was redlining, things were falling through the cracks, and I needed real help. And that's when I discovered that people are not using that medical model anymore as much. They're using a strengths-based approach.
And how were you as a sportscaster? Because I feel like you would be great.
Oh, he was great.
That was pretty good.
He had some really cool franchises. Like he had some of the most creative ways to tell a sports story. You would have loved it. Like he highlighted like the Pee Wee football kids, but he called it like NFL films. It was amazing. It was everybody's favorite. He was everybody's favorite.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I definitely would still do it if it was a thing anymore. There's like 3 sportscasters left. And so, it was fun.
So I think people listening or watching or whatever are thinking, okay, now I have some tips. Well, this is what I would imagine I would be doing. Yeah. I have some tips if I'm the spouse. But what if I have ADHD? Like, do I have ADHD? I don't know. I'm distracted. I lose my stuff all the time. I think people wonder that about themselves because all of our attention is all over the place. And we have sort of, as a society, adopted a lot of those traits. And then also, what do you do if your kids have ADHD? Kids, then what?
Well, it's a really good question. And there is a thing called acquired attention disorder. They don't So the psychologists that we know, they don't say, you don't have ADHD, you have acquired attention disorder.
It's not an official diagnosis.
Right. But we talk about it in the book. It's essentially what you said. It's like there's a new influx of distractions over the last few years. Like, it's been tough to concentrate. COVID Zoom meetings are the worst. Like, oh, maybe I have this because the things you're describing sound like me. So it's important to know that doctors are the ones who diagnose you, not this book, not me. But the cliff notes of it is, if you think you might have it, think back and ask yourself, like, did these problems present themselves as well in childhood? Because it always starts in childhood. You might get through it to adulthood, and it happens in more than one place. Like, it happens not just at home, but it happens at home and at school, or at home and at work. And that's one of the big delineators that psychologists use when they're trying to assess what's going on. As far as kids, same thing. It's the doctors definitely know what they're doing, and they've done this enough that they look for the actual signs.
For example, we had both of our kids tested, and we live in a community where there are a lot of universities. So we went to like the university route that's just like 3 days long. It's like a really exhaustive test because we wanted to be sure. And I would have bet that both of my kids had different presentations of ADHD, but one does not and one does. And so they were able to piece out what was just some basic inattentiveness and one that was like, oh yeah, super ADHD. Yeah.
And is this something you generally inherit from a parent? When you look back on your childhood, do you go, oh, hey, actually my dad was kind of like this too? Or
Yes, scientists have identified, I think, 7 genes that are connected to ADHD. And so, yes, I mean, again, it's hard to tell because, like, my dad probably had it, but no one was testing people in the 40s and 50s for ADHD. The bigger sample size you have, the larger that percentage of hereditary, passing down
Your
is
dad
getting.
super had ADHD.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was great.
Yeah.
He super had ADHD. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So you two are doing a podcast. I listened to one of your episodes, which is great. And I was like, I need to get you guys to sing a song for my podcast.
Oh.
Can you do that? Can I hire you to sing a song? I was like, it makes it sound so great. I only have music in the background.
You mean like as an open?
Yeah, like a whole,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I feel like Zibby could rhyme with so many things.
I need a jingle.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think we're on it.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
great.
It says the
Side
person who
business.
does it,
Yeah.
the person who doesn't write music. I'm like, yeah, he'll do it.
It's-
He's already thinking about it.
It's called Moms Don't Have Time to Read
Read books.
Books. And it's Zibby. Do you call yourself Zibby or Zibby Owens? Like, what are the components? Okay.
depends how formal it's.
Do you want like an original song or do you want a parody of a song that you really like?
Whatever you want to do.
So
Okay.
now his brain here's.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to pay attention.
He's not going to pay attention. By
He's
the end
gonna
of
get it. He's leaving the room now.
he's leaving the room and he's.
He's going off to Reddit.
I did this as a challenge to show you all what an ADHD brain looks like.
If you have a piano or a guitar, I can probably like knock it out right now.
I'll go grab my daughter's guitar.
Go get it.
So speaking
I'm
of
gonna
all
do-
that music, I want to know, how did you guys start the initial sort of your viral Instagrams and TikToks, and what sparked that to come to fruition?
Such an accident. We both worked in local news. We had kids. It was like a little too much. So I stepped out to start a, video production business because I think, put those skills to use. We created a Christmas video.
About how long ago was it?
10 years.
Okay.
And we created this Christmas video called, and we were just going to send it to our family and friends. Our kids wouldn't sit still for a Christmas card. And so it was a parody, and we were in our Christmas jammies. And so we danced around in our front yard to a parody of Will Smith's Welcome to Miami, but in my Christmas jammies. And over the 30 days, it got like 17 million views. But more than that, it was on every morning show. I think it was like a slow news week. It was on every morning show. It was on every, 24-hour news cycle. So it just went everything.
And what platform was that on? first?
YouTube.
Okay.
YouTube. But then and Penn was quitting his job at that time. It took us a while. We're not fast learners. So we started doing work for other people. So we would write jingles for other people, and we would do work for...
I'm pulling you backwards.
Pull us back. No, but
They're trying to
it
get
is...
ahead.
I know,
No.
I'm so sorry. I'm
No,
trying.
it is interesting. We do want to... It's so funny. I say we. It's him. He's the songwriter. But it took us a few years before we started just doing our own stuff. So it took us 3 or 4 years after that. I think if somebody who had a business degree instead of a journalism and a philosophy degree had looked at our business, they could have said, no, this is what you need to do. So yeah, we just make these silly, goofy videos, write books, have a podcast, a blog. I mean, it's a lot, but it's so fun. It's so fun to get to do this. So I don't know if that answered your question,
Yeah,
but it's all by
absolutely.
accident. There was no business
Yeah.
plan. Still no business plan.
Just going for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We got a little bit of a business plan.
We have a little. We have some goals.
I want to interrupt here. We have a team of people who help keep us on track, and they helped with the book, and they helped with all of this. They helped with the podcast. So I think they get a little
offended when I say there's no business plan.
yeah, because
Yeah, because they're like, it's our
We are the
Because
business plan.
freaking job.
They haven't shared it with you.
Yeah.
no, they have.
No, they're way smarter than we are.
Here's the crazy thing: we can't do it without them. But also, sometimes we just have to go rogue and just do something incredibly spontaneous. And they have actually learned to like roll with that, which is incredible because we're asking them to keep us on track, and then we're like, oh, we're going rogue.
Yeah.
So what's
So
something?
it's a perfect
Give me an
team.
example of something completely spontaneous.
So the eclipse happened recently, right?
Yeah.
And so we have this, we have Sam and Amory, you're like, okay, we need to do something about the eclipse. Maybe we share a video we had done the last eclipse, something like that. And Penn is taking my son to school and he's like, I got it. And you see him like take a pan from like underneath the stove. And he's taking my son to school. I was like, okay, whatever. And then I check Instagram, and he had recorded a total eclipse of the heart with the recorder, so it sounded
It's terrible.
It sounded really trashy, and it was basically an eclipse reenactment. And he just did this, and he in front of the sun just put like the pan in. I'm really not describing it well, like the pot in front of the sun, and it was like for those not in the path. This is a reenactment of the eclipse. It got something like 20 million views over a couple days, and
Amazing.
and they
The reason why we started doing this, because we weren't even sure if we were going to worry about it, but all of these, social media was like flooding with people saying, oh, it's going to be cloudy today. And so our thought was, well, no one's going to see it. So let's give it to them with this.
this reenactment.
And so for that reason, it had to be spontaneous. Like, it's not something that we could have thought of before. We realized that there was the need for that in the world. And, the best spontaneous things are reactive to something that's going on right that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, again, our team was like, wait, so we're planning this and now Penn's taking a
And then we
pan
had
yeah.
well, I won't say their name, but one of them uploaded it and put there was like a spelling error on it. And she's like, oh crap, because it was already within the first 30 minutes had something like 500,000 views. She's like, well, we can't take it down now, but there's a spelling error on it. We're like, let's just let it ride. So it's really bad. And there's like a big glaring misspelling on it. But that's fine. It's the internet and it'll go away. It's, if there was a spelling error in this, it would be a little,
that would drive me.
that would
quite
drive
nuts.
us insane.
Yeah.
But
That's like Zibby's biggest pet peeve.
Yeah.
It is.
I honestly,
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, I hate it.
Same.
But
So
then sometimes I do it, and then I only catch it later, and then I feel so bad because I'm like, oh, I get so upset when other people do it.
I know.
Do you have trouble misspelling misspell?
Yeah, 2 S's.
Yeah.
2 S's.
I have a tough time with that too. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cancel 2 L's. I don't know.
Yeah.
But honestly, I
couple
think that's
words.
like cultural. I think because in the UK is it just 1 L.
Thank you for.
So I think that.
Thank
So
you
you
for
could
that.
do.
Appreciate
I think
it.
you do it any way you want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you want.
barely a typo.
That's right.
Barely a typo. Yeah, it's when I'm like falling asleep and I'm like, just one more post.
Yeah.
And I wake up and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like my eyes were closing. Like,
What were you thinking?
yeah.
No good post
start-
happens after midnight.
I know. Like, this is just a mistake. So this from a technical side, do you plot out all your content like with this team and going rogue? Like, do you have it in a grid? Like, what's coming
Yeah.
up?
Thank God they do.
They do.
But we also will then say, no, we're doing this
That's the going rogue
instead.
part.
Right,
and
right.
then we'll.
So, but going rogue means not doing what's
So
in
there's
the-
a framework for, and by the way, for the next week, not
Okay.
the next
Got it.
month.
Right.
Yeah. So I think ideally it would be for the next month, but to Penn's point, we don't really know what's happening in our lives in the world next
Right.
week. So we don't know what we're posting next week. So
Got
Gotta
it.
keep it relevant.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but do you sell ads? So you're an ACAST like we are, which is great.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You're now a part of my team.
Yeah.
Let's go, Kyle.
You know.
Let's go.
Thank you. I didn't see this coming.
Like
You're
in
asking
terms
about-
of like monetization of your whole platform.
Okay, right. So
like,
yeah.
what do you
Yeah.
And you don't have to share. I'm just as a
No, let's
We
do
can
this.
tell you. So the podcast is one thing.
Yep.
Acast, to your point,
Yep.
they, you have an agency or some sort of in between. They put it on their platform and then they sell either dynamic ads or ads that get laid into wherever they are. You have a certain monthly amount for that, right? On Facebook and YouTube and in much smaller senses, Instagram and TikTok, there are micro profits that you make off of monetization. So if your video gets a certain number of views, it matters to a lot of those platforms how long they spend viewing. Facebook, you have to have a 3-minute ad to really
3-minute video.
3-minute video, to get the most out of that monetization. YouTube, they do pre-roll ads, so it's different there. And so that's the second source of revenue. The third, and this one ebbs and flows, but are brand deals. So that's when you make a video and a brand wants to...
I saw one I think you guys did with like pickleball and maybe Target.
Yeah, and Target.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Target's been great.
So those are great if you can find people who are willing to make truly entertaining videos that align with their product. And Target does a great job of that. So Target, and in that case was Prince, they do a great job with that. And so that when you get here is the amount of money we are willing to give you. Would you please put our product in your video?
And so I will say, so there's more. So we also have a blog that we love because we both love to write, and books. It's like to be profitable in the book business is
the dollars per hour is less than everyone knows because of how many hours you spend on it.
How many hours? But we love that.
Not
part
including
of
the publicity.
Correct.
It's like a big part of it.
Yeah. And then we also we have 2 games that we created. We have silly little, we have 2 games that we've created.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
One's more for kids, one's a little more for adults.
Yeah. And then we have t-shirts and sweatshirts and stuff like that. So we have a lot of plate spinning, and we have this whole, I think it's 7 revenue streams. But we have this little song we sing about it.
Yeah.
Because I
want to know the 7 revenue song.
Well, it's just 7 revenue streams. 7 profitable revenue streams. He sings it better. But it's because
I like that version.
I think because we live in fear, because we are really building our house on somebody else's land, right? So we're on Instagram, on Facebook, TikTok, all these algorithms change. I mean, is TikTok going away? I have
when things randomly happen like they do, I feel like in the last couple of months when suddenly it's like Instagram's down.
We have another...
Are you
We move.
We move.
We pivot.
Yeah.
I mean, Facebook was our main...
I thought you meant you actually move.
We're gone.
We leave the country. No, I mean, Facebook used to be our absolute bread and butter. Right. And Facebook's still great. We still put our stuff on there. But I just think it's, the atmosphere has become a little more... are people actually enjoying themselves on this platform anymore? And also, it has to do with what are they rewarding? Is Facebook rewarding creators, or are they rewarding people to go to Meta, which is their kind of new VR marketplace area? So we're at the mercy of these billionaires who are rewarding certain things.
Yeah, so that's why we're trying to build an email list, all of those things, that everybody's trying to do. Yeah. So just because we're building... something on land we don't know.
And are you pivoting into sort of that metaverse landscape? And how do you feel about that in the future?
No,
not yet. I mean, Instagram is owned by Meta, so we've definitely started. Our audience before we even went, we were noticing our audience was migrating to Instagram for whatever reason. That interface was working more for them, so we started focusing more on vertical videos instead of, and of course, then Facebook comes back and says we've got vertical videos now too. So yeah. I mean, the answer is. We when those things happen, we try to get to we try to meet our audience where they are.
Yeah.
So unless I missed it, there is no TV show or movie or something. You don't want to do that, or that's not part of the plan? Or?
It's so funny. Since the pandemic, we've been involved in this pitch process for a game show. And I think the concept is hilarious, but the process, it is just, I admire the production company
takes
that's
the fun out of
it. Well, no, they're great. I just don't know if we're TV people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't know.
We did 2 pilots for cable, reality-ish shows. One for Up Television, very, very early, and then one for the Food Network. Both were a lot of fun, a lot of work.
And not a lot of money.
And... Not a lot of money, and success to them is interesting. The people who we put on Facebook Live to promote the fact that the show was coming on had more engagement and more views than the actual show itself. So getting our audience to go and turn on a television is a harder ask than we think. Also, when you do a television show, you deal with an agent, you deal with a production company, you deal with a network that are all taking pieces of the pie when it comes to ad dollars. When we put a video on Facebook or YouTube, we own all of those ad dollars.
I will say, if they come tomorrow and they've greenlit this TV show, we're going to be so excited.
Because it's fun. Because they have an idea on how to like take our stuff and put it on steroids, like what we've never done before.
But you're correct. There's not at this point a TV show.
Yeah.
I feel like the TV thing would be a different audience. Like, it would be harder.
Yeah.
Like, the goal would be to reach people who are just watching TV and not who
Right. And that's,
well, you know this. I mean,
No. But that is why I think it's so tough to get these internet people. It's a tough sell to get internet people because it doesn't really convert in the way people think it does.
Yeah.
So how does it affect your marriage to have your marriage also be a brand?
It affects it.
It's a good question.
It's a great question.
It's so
You coming in.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
that was our last book, which was called Everybody Fights.
Yep.
So why not get better at it? Yeah, I mean, let me just start with this. I was in local news, and Kim was in local news, and we decided to quit our jobs and bet on each other and start this business. And the romantic notion of that was enough to carry us a long way. But I also am completely guilty of not doing any sort of HR training about how to work with my wife, where I'd spent 15 years in a fairly high energy and sometimes like a little bit abrasive newsroom where people are very direct and talk to each other in a different way. And pretty quickly, I'm glad I had a wife who's patient and understood. And, you know, I think I was the way I was talking to her as an employee was not okay, even if it wasn't my wife. And so that was our first deep dive was counseling, like to kind of work this out.
I would say we've said this, that we'd rather be married than have an Instagram page or a TikTok, whatever. Like, we'd rather be married than do that. And I think we have been pretty protective. As much as we do these little skits and stuff, we don't share everything. You know, we're not live streaming, you know, every single thing. These are like 3-minute kind of hyperboles of what's happening in our day. But life has changed a little bit since, like, it's great to go out and meet people and have people recognize us. It's great. But then that does, like, it creates, like, if we go on date nights, it's not really private. You know, it's so that has changed it a little bit. And we didn't really think about that when we started this, because we had no idea that this would be this, you know?
Yeah, we were just doing this so that I could get off of the local news schedule and be able to see my kids.
Yeah.
And so it's the way it's developed has been nice. So Cliff Notes answer to that is we learned how to talk to each other and not bring some of our, you know, personality quirks into the workplace. We've learned how to create some boundaries, which I think they're not always successful, but they are most of the time. And like, our marriage is getting stronger because of the work that we're doing to get better at that. It doesn't work itself out. It takes work.
But we did go on a date to celebrate our anniversary, and we were like, let's not talk about work. And so, but it was like,
where do you think knives come from?
yeah, like, what is this about? Yeah, so it gets kind of hard.
And then how did that translate into co-authoring a book? Because that's a stressful thing in and of itself.
I will say for this book, first of all, two books, but for this one in particular, it is, I would say, 80% Penn, and because of the really great outline he came up with and everything, I had my assignments and I could go into my corner. This was a very separate writing experience, and I could kind of hand mine in like a book report. So there was no clash on this book.
That's great.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Would you agree?
Yeah. So, look, the only clashing is, I don't want to call it clashing, but you have to take inventory and be a little vulnerable when you hear, oh my God, she's really taking her time to write this. I am affecting her a lot. Like, I have done some stuff that I probably didn't even think about that. And again, the book tells you this. I can't help it sometimes. But boy, I've got some work to do. And I'm glad that you were honest and open about all those things. But I think the same way she read some of my excerpts. Yeah, she told me I've always made the
P silent.
I made the P silent.
Okay.
Excerpts.
Yeah.
And I think a light went off in her head saying, oh, he didn't mean to. He's not trying to disrespect me. You know, he's not letting me down as a partner. His brain needs help and systems.
Well, I think you two have gotten the communication down. This is like
Yeah.
a model thing here,
Really,
you know, like
really is.
respect.
Do you want us to record next time we get in a fight so we can just,
just send
add
that
that
to
in?
you?
Because it's still going to happen.
No,
Like,
I
we're
believe
gonna
we
get in
fight. I mean,
fights,
you're
yeah.
regular people.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
everybody fights.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
just saying, you're coming at it from a place of understanding
Yeah.
and compassion and respect, and you can just see it.
Yeah.
He was like looking at you so nicely when you tried to sing.
He was like, "Oh, my poor tone deaf wife."
She's actually got a great voice.
No, I don't. It's
no,
fine.
you-
I have many
Kim, you
gifts.
have a great voice. I've heard you in the shower. It's just, I think, I don't know that you want to do that.
Yeah. Well, no, I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so last thing on the ADHD front. Is there a piece of it that you are super grateful to have as part of your makeup, and is there a piece of it that you're like, thanks but no thanks, I'd just as soon get rid of?
Good question.
Yeah. So I'll start with the one that I would like to get rid of, and the thing that I'm still struggling with, because I'm getting better at picking stuff up, not leaving things in places. Those are systems that you can use, checklists and Siri and all these like wonderful things to help keep you on schedule. I have the toughest time listening. I feel like I am so eager to jump in when there's especially if there's one person and that person is okay with some kinetic interruptions, then that's okay. But if you're at like a dinner table and someone says something and you have an idea, you really should wait in line and make sure everyone else has, what they want to say. I am still struggling not just jumping in.
Yeah.
My wife has become a nice governor.
Oh,
Just
I just
interjected.
interjected.
But that's
That
a
was
lot.
kinetic. That was good.
That was good.
That was
though.
yes and.
That was a yes
So
and.
the non-kinetic ones are the ones that are the most trouble. And Kim is so used to this now.
I just like.
that I will take a breath and she's like, here it comes. And she will put her hand on my leg.
Yeah.
And I will do, so here's what it is. I'll go,
Yeah, at dinner last night because
stop.
somebody was starting to tell a
Yeah.
story, and I know he had a story on top of that, but I was like,
not yet. And I
Well,
got to
at
it.
the risk of interjecting again.
Yeah,
I
you're
just
yes
wanna- I
anding,
just want
you're
to
good.
clarify though. Would it be so? I interjected, but it was relevant.
relevant.
Yes.
And
Right.
you
So
weren't.
you're saying maybe you're at a dinner party, people are talking about something, and you have an idea that pops in your head. You want, is it not relevant to the conversation at hand?
Where did you get your hair gel? I was
Exactly.
like wondering where, because it looks really nice, and I would love to like find out
So
where you got your hair
that's
gel
a left turn. So
Right.
you're telling a story about your summer vacation,
Exactly.
and he's like, "I went on summer vacation," and takes a right turn and kind of takes ownership of that conversation and hijacks it.
But I have done the hair gel thing too. Like it can be really bad. Like it's
And I think it also depends on the setting, of course, your level of comfort with people,
Right.
like that whole thing. But he's gotten very good
Yeah.
at that.
I will never trade the type of receptive creative brain that comes with having ADHD. And that is, I'm going to give you a metaphor that Marcy Caldwell gave me, she's all over this book. She's the one with the mixing board and the fishbowl, and all of these things are great metaphors. The neurotypical brain is like a VIP party with a bouncer who will expertly let in thoughts when they are supposed to come in. It is why they are better at listening and better at not interrupting. Okay. My brain is an open air concert. I can feel the wind. I can feel the rain, the temperature. There's a bunch of people. Everyone gets in. It's very noisy. And all of this comes to me, right? That makes it hard for me to listen because I'm getting these ideas. But when you want to create something new, inspiration and creation is nothing more than finding things that are out there waiting to come to you. That's a firm belief that I have. And I feel all of it. So when I'm in a space of creation, things, and I want to say, well, things just come to me. No, that's my brain. That's the way that my brain is built. I'm able to take all of this stimulus in the world and put it into something new. And that's ADHD. That's spontaneity, creativity, outside the box thinking. All of that comes from having that sort of receptive brain that causes problems everywhere else in the world. But if you can find a way to channel that into, it could be music, art, writing, it could be a new solution to a problem that you have in your company or your business. If you can harness that, it's really cool.
You might even say awesome.
It is, yeah. And that concludes our it's such a
Thank you for joining us.
you don't have to do
See
that.
you back here next time.
We have so much time, but it just felt like a good button.
No,
Was that-
that's it.
And we're done.
We're done. And we're out. Thank
we're
you
out.
so much for coming on.
Thank you. That was so much fun.
Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social at Zibby Owens and at Zibby Readers.